Hey there, children. It's me, Grimbles. And today, I'm going to serenade you with a story. Let's get to it. At the end of 2011, I got married. And at the beginning of 2012, I was broke. Being young, stupid, and suddenly very desperate to feed and shelter my new wife, who was going to college full-time, did not put me in the best financial situation as a new husband. What did I do? Did I get temp work or scrounge by with odd jobs? Absolutely not. See, I'm not sure how many of you remember, but in 2008, millennials experienced the first economy-changing devastation of our generation. In 2012, we were still dealing with the fallout. Needless to say, it was hard to get a job delivering pizza when your competition was a recently unemployed neurologist and an MBA. Instead, I did the only sensible thing I could think of. I joined the Air Force, as enlisted, with my AFSC designated as Open General. I'm not going to pretend it was the smartest thing I've ever done, but as I didn't have a comma in my bank account when the doc told me to turn my head and cough, it was certainly the most financially beneficial decision I could make. Times were so tough that I couldn't even sign up for experimental drug testing, as everywhere I applied with had a waiting list of potential applicants a mile long. Everyone was struggling, so I figured if I was going to struggle, I might as well learn some useful skills from it. Fun fact, I ended up in security forces, also known as the Walmart greeters of the Air Force. Those useful skills I got from my AFSC, if I had taken my training and went to an adjacent civilian career field, I'd have ended up a cop. And between you and me, I'm not exactly great at arresting people for victimless crimes to help maintain private prisons' share prices. Oh yeah, private prisons in the US have stocks. That's a real fact you can look up. Anyway, more on my security forces and Article 15s later, I want to share a story about BMT, or basic military training. You see, it's fairly well known that when you enlist, they don't just hand you a gun and send you to a job. You have to perform anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks of basic training. At the time I was in, basic training was 8 weeks, with an additional 0 week at the beginning added on for in-processing. The schedule, from what parts of my brain remember those 9 weeks, went something like: Week 0, angry man yells at me while taking us to various places to get supplies for the next 8 weeks. Week 1, crying and piss tests. I don't remember a whole lot of week 1 except for a piss test where they made us drink a gallon of water at stupid o'clock and then stand around trying not to pee ourselves while pissed off instructors marched up and down and called anyone who peed themselves standing in line diaper boy, or yelling things like, "Looks like you're good at washing out, trainee, just like you wash the front of your pants. Get back in line." Side note here, week 0 and 1 are generally when you discover how you handle stress. You'll develop either one or multiple of the following symptoms like you're in an antidepressant commercial: uncontrollable crying, bedwetting, insomnia, loss of appetite, constipation, loss of motor skills for basic things like showering, so on and so forth. Before anybody asks, I fell into the crying and loss of appetite category. I found out the hard way that the guy in the bunk above me was a bedwetter. Weeks 2 through 3 are general classes and your first tests, which you're expected to fail and the MTI is expected to yell at you about. Weeks 4 through 5 are do-over weeks, where your MTI breaks you down on a molecular level, and you either pass everything you failed in weeks 2 through 3, or you're sent back a week as punishment and do it all again. Week 6, if I recall, was deployment training, where we sat around in a 120-degree silo in full hazmat gear during the Texas summer. At some point in all this, I remember getting tear gassed, but for the life of me, I can't tell you when it happened. Only that I tripped on my way out of the gas chamber and ate an entire mouthful of tear gas laid in sand. That was fun. Truth be told, I don't remember much about the last 2 weeks, except for an obstacle course and my final PT test. I remember sometime during week 8, my MTI started hooking up with a sergeant in dental and just abandoned us. Like, no joke. If he wasn't absolutely required to be there, he just wasn't there. The existential nightmare of having every minute of your life dictated to you for 2 months straight, only to be left with hours of free time for 4 days straight, was a psychological hell far worse than anything else that happened there. Now that I've explained the schedule, I'm going to shift back to a story that happened during the second week of BMT, the locker inspection. You see, even though you're expected to fail your first tests, you're given all the materials you need to succeed. You're shown the proper way to roll your socks, how to organize your lockers, how to make your bed. Everything is painstakingly laid out in front of you days before your first locker inspection. But trust me, you're going to fail. I knew I was going to fail long before the inspection, as I've never been a detail-oriented person. Cutting threads with a grooming kit pair of scissors and ironing shirts was never my style. Needless to say, I needed a plan. Fortunately for me, about 3 lockers before getting to mine, my MTI asked a trainee, "Do you believe we should bring back corporal punishment?" Now, my MTI was 6'3", built like a brick wall, and overall looked like what would happen if you put Rene Diff from Aqua's head on Lee Haney's body. Suddenly, having him yell, "Do you believe I should be able to beat you with a wooden stick?" probably wasn't something anybody was expected to be asked. The trainee he was addressing flubbered an incoherent response, the MTI laughed at him, and moved on. Now, when Sergeant Diff Haney got to my locker, I had a plan. Before he could open it, I loudly blurted, "Sir, Trainee Grimbles reports as ordered. I believe in corporal punishment." Prior to that point, and never again after this moment, I saw my MTI completely dumbfounded by what I had just said. A trainee had just admitted that he'd be okay being beaten for failure to comply. He stopped dead in his tracks, looked me right in the eye and said, "Oh yeah, Grimbles, what do you think we should bring back?" Now, between you and me, I hadn't expected to get this far, and my mind almost went blank. Except for one memory from my childhood, the whipping scene from Starship Troopers. I held on to that thought and went with it. "Public flogging, sir. To his credit, my MTI had regained his composure at this point and didn't even blink. "You into some freaky things, ain't you, Grimbles? You want a big black man to tie you down and beat you, don't you?" "Sir, if that'll improve morale conformity, then I accept that as punishment," I quickly barked, trying my hardest not to bust out laughing. "All right, Grimbles, so you want to be whipped while everyone watches. Who else do you want to see whipped? Can't just be you who needs to be beat, can it?" I'm going to pause my story to explain something real fast. MTIs are a whole different type of human. The stuff these men can say with a straight face is legendary. On a later event, a trainee accidentally farted while our MTI was walking by, and Sergeant Diff Haney proceeded to call him, and I quote, "a tear gas and intermensch who tried to assassinate a superior NCO with his booty cheeks," before making every single one of us stand around in a circle surrounding the trainee and make fart noises while our MTI wrote him a fake Article 15 for violating the Geneva Convention with chemical warfare. Back to the story. I'm screwed. My MTI just asked me to sell out my fellow trainees. As an unspoken rule, you don't do that. If something goes wrong, you try to minimize the punishment to as few people as possible, and then help those people out in private when the MTI isn't looking. However, he hadn't opened my locker yet, and I wasn't failing that test. "You should beat the entire flight, sir. We're all pathetic. It'd be good for us." Diff Haney's response? "Yeah, you're a freak, Grimbles. Wanting to see a bunch of young boys stripped and beaten for failing to tuck their beds in? I had to put you in a female flight before I find you coming back from the BX with some Astroglide while giving Training McMuffin weird looks." At this point, Sergeant Diff Haney, as disciplined as he was cracking a smile. He marked my locker check as passed and walked to the next locker. I heard him say, "You good sleeping next to a trainee who's checking out your booty cheek, son? Boy's a freak." Before the trainee snapped and started laughing so hard, the MTI forgot all about me, started calling him an undisciplined little freak who deserved to be flogged in front of a private audience of trainee Grimbles and his family. Needless to say, the crisis was averted, and my second week's tests were behind me. That's it for this story. Depending on the response, I'll tell you more in the near future. Anyway, next video should be a game video, but we'll see. Anyway, see you next time. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Open General is what you do when you're trying to get deployed, or at least get a job as quickly as possible. And you will always end up with the jobs that nobody else wants, because, you know, they're the open jobs, the one nobody's signing up for. So that's how you end up as like a cook, a dental hygienist, or me, security forces. If you can wait, get a secured AFSC, or at least like go in open technical. It's way better than what happened to me.